Well, I want to pick up a little bit where we were last night. Not totally, but a little bit. And I want to underscore an issue here. The same media that helped force Joe Biden on us is now leading the way to remove Biden and get a different nominee. If this doesn't demonstrate once and for all that the media and the Democrat Party are one and the same, and in fact the media lead the Democrat Party in many respects, then nothing will. Then nothing will. This is a battle now between the media and Democrat Party activists. That is, the media want to replace Biden. Democrat Party activists, some do, some don't. The problem they have is this. 99% of the delegates who were elected by the people in the Democrat primaries are committed to Joe Biden. They're not going to just give up and say, okay, great, the New York Times tells us to throw off Biden. Biden is going to have to decide if he's going to run again or not. And I just want to make something clear to everybody. What the media are pushing, what the media want, is the complete disenfranchisement of millions and millions of voters throughout the spring, early summer, the primary period. They promoted Biden the first time around. They promoted him again. They went after Robert Kennedy Jr., who wanted to actually run in the Democrat primary. So they broomed him out. So he runs as an independent. But there's Biden. They set up the primary system so South Carolina's first, not New Hampshire. Everything's set up for Biden, just like the debate. You know, the padded walls and all the rest, just to make sure Biden was comfortable and would have an advantage. So there's the debate, and it's catastrophic. And the media are the first to say, we're getting all these calls and everything from Democrats, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Working with their Democrat friends. But all this talk, all these stories now in the media, the Democrat Party media, most of it, particularly the left-wing Democrat Party media, saying, this is how you would remove Biden and get somebody else. Here's 3 ways to do it. Here's one way to do it. And it's going on and on and on. And now the media are asking Democrats on Capitol Hill if they still support Biden. So what the media are saying is, we helped bring the nation to this point, which is a damnable thing. We helped bring the nation to the point where one of the candidates for the biggest party in America is not fit for office. We lied, we covered up, we censored, we provided propaganda, we told you videos weren't videos, shuffling wasn't shuffling. We came out on our own and talked about how brilliant Joe Biden is, sharp as a tack. But then the American people saw the whole thing and it collapsed. And so the media are the first to say, now we need to broom him out. We need to disenfranchise tens of millions of voters who voted for delegates to vote for Joe Biden at the convention to be the presidential nominee of the Democrat Party. If they succeed in this, it means tens of millions of people who were activists, who donated, who voted, who participated in the process, they'll be broomed out too. And then you'll have special interests basically at the convention. We'll make the decision who the Democrat Party nominee will be. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this. Because the media are not about America, the Constitution, the process, or anything else. The media are about power. And they've exposed themselves over and over again, but this one's a doozy. Its connection to the Democrat Party and its lack of connection to the truth and the facts are on full display. Now, I want to move to another subject. This court ruling in Fisher versus United States on the obstruction issue was a 6-3 vote. And I just want to point out that Judge Jackson voted with the majority. And here's what the court said in sum. The Sarbanes-Oakley Act imposes criminal liability on anyone who corruptly alters, destroys, mutilates, or conceals a record, document, or other object, or attempts to do so with the intent to impair the object's integrity or availability for use in an official proceeding. And then there's some general language at the end that says, or otherwise obstructs, influences, impedes, and so forth. 6-3 decision. Justice Barrett wrote the decision. She and two leftists who thought that that should stay in place. Barrett is gone. Barrett's on her own now. All that said, what does this demonstrate? Why were these charges brought? 4 charges on the so-called January 6th case, 2 of them related to this law. The district court upheld it. The circuit court panel with 2 Biden appointees upheld it. The Supreme Court 6-3 with Justice Jackson joining the majority said, no, that's not what the law says. It had no intent to apply to anything like this. So 50% of the case that Jack Smith brought was just thrown out against Donald Trump. And all these January 6ers, their lawyers will take a look at this. But this is more evidence about Jack Smith, a reckless rogue prosecutor. You're going after a former president who's running for president, and you take a statute that has no application and you desperately try to massage it and rework it and take so-called facts and shove it into it like a square peg into a round hole. You don't bring the country to this point by playing loose with the law and loose with the facts. And that's what he did. That's what the U.S. Attorney's Office did in Washington, D.C., and that's what every one of these damn district court judges did in Washington, D.C., as well as a circuit court panel. They didn't care. This is a very simple law. It's black and white. It's quite understandable. But they didn't have anything to hang their hat on, and boy, they wanted to hang somebody. But let's go on here. So that leaves 2 charges left against Donald Trump in the so-called January 6th case by the rogue prosecutor, by the unconstitutional prosecutor who was appointed in violation of the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. Count 1 is 18 U.S.C. Section 371. What is that? If 2 or more persons conspire either to commit any offense against the United States or to defraud the United States or any agency thereof in any matter or for any purpose, and 1 or more of such persons do any act to affect the object of the conspiracy, each shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. This is a statute that was written and deals with federal contractors. It has nothing to do with January 6th. And yet, there's Jack Smith, loads it up with facts about, Donald Trump worked with Arizona, and he worked with Michigan, and he spoke to the people in Georgia, and we had the fake electors. It has nothing to do with this. 0. So that's one of the remaining of the 2 charges. But what Jack Smith is hoping is he gets a break of the Alvin Bragg, Judge Merchan type, because they know that the jury will be anti-Trump. It doesn't matter what happens, doesn't matter what's said. Guilty, guilty, guilty before there's 1 word of evidence presented. So 18 U.S. Code 371, one of the 2 remaining criminal statutes, is a contractor statute. It has nothing to do with what took place on January 6th. And actually, when you read his indictments, the grand jury's indictments, you'll notice all the trampling all over free speech in the First Amendment, because Jack doesn't care. Jack's a hunter. Then we have another section. The other law that's left is 18 U.S.C. Section 241, what I've been calling the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. Well, what is that about? Look where Jack is going to find laws to try and apply against Trump, which are preposterous. Makes it unlawful for 2 or more persons to agree to injure, threaten, or intimidate a person in the United States in the free exercise and enjoyment of any right or privilege secured by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of his or her having exercised such a right. What? This is basically a civil rights law. It was passed because it was directed and aimed at the Klan. It was preventing black people from voting, from exercising their constitutional rights in elections and other activities and so forth. This has nothing to do with January 6th. Nothing. So that's what's left in the so-called January 6th case. Now, I've heard people say if Jack Smith wants to go ahead, he could just forget about the obstruction charges, which is true, and go ahead with these 2. He shouldn't go ahead with these 2. Can he? I guess he can. I guess he can. I'd seek an interlocutory appeal if I'm Trump's people. say, wait a minute, whoa. Before we start this whole trial here, we got to get these laws straightened out, because Jack the Ripper Smith over here, he's already been admonished by the Supreme Court. And it's not the first time. We have the case with the governor of Virginia. That was another time, and so forth and so on. So he shouldn't be so quick to pull the trigger. And then we have the case in Florida. What's going on in Florida? Well, the media, the same media that brought us the Joe Biden debacle, the same media that's been going after Alito and Thomas, is going after Aileen Cannon, the district court judge in Florida. And everybody I know who's been in that courtroom says she is smart, she is prepared, her questions are right on, whether you like what she's asking or not. This is a woman who spent 7 years as a federal prosecutor. This is a woman who had a significant position in the private practice with a major law firm. And so they act like she doesn't know what she's doing. She makes the point, look, I have a trial. I've got motions. I got to deal with these motions now, not during the course of the trial. So she is methodically going through these issues. And these issues are huge. Whether the appointment of Jack Smith is constitutional under the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. It's so huge, 2 former attorneys general have filed briefs and said, wait a minute, this guy is unconstitutional. And she's raised other issues. Jack Smith wants this massive gag order on Donald Trump. And she said, wait a minute, I'm not so sure about that. I got to take a look at it. Everybody thinks it's the Manhattan courthouse, the Star Chamber, but it's not. Then she says, in the course of this trial, I have to deal with evidentiary issues. And even though a judge, now retired, I believe, or senior status in Washington, D.C., ruled that attorney-client privilege information that Donald Trump shared with his lead counsel in the documents case was ruled by this judge in Washington, D.C., to violate the crime fraud exception to attorney-client privilege. That is, you can't use your attorney to conspire to commit a crime. I need to review that because I can't act based on what another trial lawyer said in another jurisdiction. And I might add as a footnote, a jurisdiction that the case should never have been brought in, but Jack the Ripper Smith brought it there anyway because he knew he needed that grand jury in Washington, D.C. So she says, wait a minute, I got to look at that too. So, of course, the same New York Times that was pushing the Biden nomination, attacking anybody who challenged his lack of sense, now is trying to push him out, is constantly attacking this Judge Cannon, as are the same media, MSNBC and CNN, that have been lying and lying and lying to you for years about Joe Biden. This is a stand-up judge. I may not always agree with her, but these judges, serious judges, are starting to look at these things. The appellate court in Georgia said, wait a minute, Fannie Willis, wait a minute. We need to take a look at your conflict of interest. The Supreme Court said, wait a minute. This obstruction statute, Jack, has nothing to do with your application. The judge in Florida said, wait a minute. I don't even know if your appointment is constitutional. Plus, on top of that, you're making extraordinary demands. This is what judges are supposed to do. Now, this coming week, the Supreme Court will issue its immunity decision. I was here in front of you. I said this is a big deal. Most people dismissed it. Oh, come on, Mark. Immunity, that's way out of line. That's not going to happen. It's a big issue, isn't it? And it's turning out to be a big issue, isn't it? They were wrong. The documents case, how many people came in front of you and said, that's an open and shut case. No, it's not. There are motions, there are issues on the table before you get to the issue of the taking of a document. And we talked about that on this show, too. They were wrong about that, too. And so you need to pursue the avenues that are available to you to challenge what is taking place on constitutional grounds and other grounds. That's why I've urged President Trump's lawyers, not directly through this camera, to take a look at the all writs statutes or the common law and to really beat a path to the Supreme Court, whether they take it or not, which is what's taken place in New York. What's taken place in New York is a violation of the 5th, 6th, 8th, 14th Amendment's a violation of federal jurisdiction and an abuse and misuse of federal election law. Just one man's opinion, just that we here happen to be, well, let me put it this way. We're the Philadelphia Phillies of lawyers right now. Don't they have the best average in baseball? I think they do.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.